Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
Going great, man. Everything's going wonderful. Business is picking up, which I'm grateful for, and 2022 is looking out. What about you, Raphael? How's it going over there?
Good, man. Good. Can't complain. We've just been busy on a lot of fronts. Got a lot of active people that I'm working with on the buy side, and then also working on securing a few listings as well. So it's definitely been an active last few weeks. And you, myself, and another business partner of ours have been working towards setting up a short-term rental property management business, and so we're working on that. And it's just a very active time in the business. So it's definitely a good time to be in the commercial real estate space. And I think going forward in 2022, it will be as well. But speaking of just a phenomenal time and great conversation, we had the honor and privilege of interviewing Bo Barron. He's the CEO of Barron Commercial Group. He's also a broker, developer, and, CCIM instructor extraordinaire. He was actually my CCIM instructor back in September, as I took CCIM 102, which is one of the core courses that focuses on market analysis. Some of the things we talked about during this podcast episode is that we talked a little bit about his background, his experience in the military, and how it has impacted his business for the better long term. We also touched on his experience in the self-storage space and why he decided to go into self-storage in the first place. Some of the reasons that he shared were very insightful, and so I'm sure you guys are going to gain some value from that. And then we also talked about some of the analysis pieces to understanding why an opportunity may work or may not work. He alludes to the CCIM 102 course that I went through, and he ultimately teaches as to the different characteristics of the course that enabled him to make a decision on a particular piece of property that they were looking at in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And then finally, we touched on some of the value that he's received from the CCIM Institute. I'm affiliated with the CCIM Institute. I have not received my designation yet, but I can tell you just from my experience of taking the courses and surrounding and being around the people who are CCIMs and the network, it's just such an impressive organization, and the individuals within it are just an extremely impressive bunch. And, obviously Bo is one of those individuals, and he kind of shares his insights as to why he thinks the CCIM Institute is a phenomenal opportunity for those individuals who are interested and really just in the commercial real estate industry. You don't necessarily have to be a broker. You can be a banker. You can be, a lawyer. You really just have to be within the commercial real estate space and want to operate within it as well. So it was a great conversation. I always like having conversations with Bo since I met him or got an opportunity to take his class in September. We've kept in touch here and there. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch in the future. Jeff, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, the one thing that stood out for me as Bo is how crucial mindset is. It's just going through his journey from when he started out when he's 18, and like how his mindset was and how it detoured and grew along his journey. And I think that you guys are gonna get a lot of value out of how he went and now where he is. And I think a lot of you is actually going to relate to what he has to say, and in one way or another. It might not be a particular situation, but how you got from the A to now you're at Z point of your life. So, but yeah, great guy Bo is, and I can't wait for everyone to listen. Another thing is we definitely appreciate all the 5-star reviews. If you can take the time and actually do a 5-star review after this podcast. Don't do it while driving. Let's be safe out there. But please keep giving us those 5-star reviews. It's definitely helped us raise our listeners and our reach, more importantly. And we want to reach a lot of people in order to give them the gift of the education in the CRE community. So, but Raphael, what about you?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we just greatly appreciate it. I know we say it at the beginning and end of every podcast episode, but it really is humbling to see the amount of reach and downloads and everything that we receive from you guys. So if you guys don't mind, like Jeff said, don't do it while driving, be a safe driver. But if you can, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review and provide some feedback for us in the podcast. I mean, it would be greatly appreciated. So again, thank you all so much. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into the podcast. Well, welcome, Bo. Great to see you this fine morning. It's one interview that I've been looking forward to. So really excited to have you on the podcast.
Well, thanks, fellas. I appreciate the invite, and I'm excited about talking to you today.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on for sure. Where are you actually tuning in from? Is it Owensboro?
It is. Yeah. I live in Owensboro, Kentucky, and nice. Small town. I know you guys know where that is, but for your other listeners, it's about an hour and a half west of Louisville, Kentucky, along the river. Population about 100,000 people.
Yeah, and it's just south of Evansville as well, Indiana. Yeah. So for those of you guys listening, and for those of you guys, to provide some context to Bo, I actually he was one of my professors for CCIM 102, and I feel like we've met briefly before then, but we really got to know each other through that class, and so I'm really excited to dive into your backstory and all the things you've been doing over the course of your commercial real estate career, because you do have a lot of unique insights to share. And, that's the whole reason we have this podcast, is to try to provide as much value as possible. So one thing we typically like to do with our guests is we like to learn a little bit more about their backstory. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your story, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. So I grew up in a household that was commercial and residential real estate related. My mom owned a Century 21 office. I think at some point when I was a kid, she had the largest office in the state of Kentucky. My dad was a commercial real estate broker and developer. Going back another generation to my granddaddy, he was a home builder. I kind of grew up in that environment in this small town called Owensboro, and I wasn't interested in any of it. I wasn't really interested in Owensboro much. I didn't have this vision of me living here and working here, continuing on the family business, none of that. Thought there was this big world out there, and I wanted to get a look at it. So when I graduated high school, I went to Murray State University. And if you're not familiar with Murray State University, that's where Ja Morant, the star for the Memphis Grizzlies, that's where he went to college. But I went down to Murray for 4 years, and I was a terrible college student. I mean, I was terrible. I did really well in high school, but it wasn't that difficult. I didn't have to put forth much effort. And if you asked my parents, they would describe me as a kid as the one who I did a lot of work figuring out how I could do the least amount of work and still succeed. Right. So like I'd go into like the final exam for some class in high school, and I knew that if I got like an 84.5, I could still get an A in the class. So I did all this work to figure out how to do less work. And that really kind of characterized my work ethic all the way through college. Well, that bit me in the rear end in college. And I essentially wasted about 4 years. And I got to the end of that time, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very unhappy with who I was. I wasn't man enough to take care of myself, to do the simple things that I needed to do. And so I considered all the men in my life who I respected the most, and almost all, not all of them, but almost all of them had served in the military. My dad, my granddads, they were all in the Army. And so I thought, well, maybe they could fix me, get me to a point where I could excel at something. So I went and visited the recruiting offices, and in Owensboro, they were all in a line. You had the Air Force, you had the Navy, you had the Army, and the Marine Corps, in that order. And so I started with the Air Force, and I went in there and I talked to those guys, and they showed me this video of boot camp. Nothing against the Air Force, but I needed to get kicked in the rear end, and I was looking for the largest boot to do it. And the Air Force didn't seem like they had the biggest boot. I skipped the Navy because I didn't want to wear those uniforms. Nothing against the Navy. It just wasn't my thing. Went in and talked to the Army because my dad and my granddads were in the Army. They told me all the things that they could do for me. Like when I walked in, they were talking about what they could give me, offer me, the benefits, all that stuff. So I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. Then I took that information over to the Marine Corps, and I walked in. I told that recruiter, I said, look, I talked to the Air Force, not interested, not wearing those Navy uniforms. The Army offered me all this stuff. What do you guys have for me? And the recruiter looked at me and he said, and we don't have bleep for you. I wonder if you have the mettle to be in my Marine Corps. And I was like, all right, I've found my people here. And from that point on, he was pushing my buttons. He was challenging my manhood, if I had what it took, all this stuff, and talked me out of the idea of going into the reserves. Because look, when I say I wasted 4 years at Murray State University, I did. Like I had a whole nother year before I could graduate. So I was enlisting, I walked in there thinking, and I'll just go reserves and finish college. And they talked me out of that. I was going in full time. And then we were talking about what I would do in the Marine Corps. So they grabbed the job book, which is a MOS book, Military Occupational Specialties. And we're flipping through, and he's like, do you want to be a grunt infantry guy? And I was like, no, that doesn't sound very good. He's like, are you mechanical? And I remember looking at my hands thinking, these are the softest man hands I have ever seen. Like I've never really worked with my hands except for one summer, literally digging ditches. And I was like, that's not it. My skill set is more in the mind, the brain. I was like, well, what do you have for like smarter people? Maybe I shouldn't have said it that way, but he said, well, here's the intelligence jobs. So we're looking at these, and I'm scrolling down through here, and I see this one. I didn't know what it was, but it had the largest signing bonus. And I remember saying, man, what's this cryptologic warfare linguist? And he looks at me and he's like, forget it. You're not smart enough to do that, which really made me mad. So I was like, is there a test? Give me the test. And so they did. I had to go to Louisville to the MEP station to take this defense language aptitude battery test, which is the weirdest test ever. And your brain either works that way or it doesn't. Turns out mine did. I passed the test. And I ended up being a linguist in the Marine Corps. I'm not good at languages and I don't like them. But, the recruiter challenged me. And so I ended up being a linguist in the Marine Corps. You get to the language school, Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, which is a beautiful place. And they give you 4 options. Marine Corps says, look, you can have one of 4 languages. It's Korean, Russian, Arabic, or Spanish. Rank them on what you'd like. Well, that's a fallacy. They don't really care what you like. That's more of an appeasement strategy, in my opinion. It's all about the needs of the Marine Corps. And so I asked for Spanish, please, because it was a 6-month school and you were out of there. Russian was a year-long school, and then Korean and Arabic were a year and a half. And so I ranked them in that order: Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Korean, and they gave me Arabic. So it took me 2 years to get my clearance and get out of that school. I'm there in Monterey, California, studying the hardest school I've ever been to. And I went into the Marine Corps to get out of school. And they sent me right back to it. So, and then I spent 3 years in Augusta, Georgia, doing the job. We essentially stole communications from the bad guys and analyzed and interpreted that stuff. So it was a pretty interesting gig in the Marine Corps. But I'll tell you, Arabic as a language, and I don't remember hardly any of it anymore. I've been out close to 20 years now, but it's not that helpful in Owensboro, Kentucky, as it turns out. I still wish I could have had Spanish, but that was my Marine Corps career. The day I got out, I started working with my dad in the commercial real estate business the next day. That was in 2004. The first thing he did was put me in a CCIM introduction. I forget what they call it now, but it was like the introductory course. I didn't have a license. I didn't have a clue about anything. And I was in that. And a condition of my employment was that I had to get my CCIM designation within like the first 5 years or something like that. My dad's a CCIM, and my mom and my grandfather both took CCIM classes. But that really kind of launched my career. Just learning from my dad those first couple of years, and taking those CCI courses kind of made me dangerous, made me valuable to people, gave me a lot of confidence. And so I did brokerage with my dad for about 8 years. Then I went to work for SVN. We had franchised with Sperry Van Ness at the time, SVN now. So I was familiar, we were a franchisee, and they made me an offer to become the vice president of organizational development, which I did for a year. Didn't love that job. I was gone all the time. At one point at the end of that year, my wife asked me if I might consider doing something else. She was starting to feel like a single mom. So I left SVN after a year and went to work with a good buddy of mine who had started a food safety technology company here in town. Did that for a couple of years, kind of helping him get that off the ground. Turns out I love to help people build things. And then I left that job after a couple of years and went to work as the COO of the Massimo Group. And I had, when Rod Santamassimo started the Massimo Group, I'd hired him to be my coach. And then after a couple of years, he asked me to become one of his coaches for the Massimo Group. And I coached commercial real estate brokers for about the next 7 years, and ended up being the COO of the company. Did that with Rod for 3 years, and then left at the end of 2018 to come back home. I say that figuratively speaking. I never left Owensboro, but and I took over the family business. So since 2018, I've been back in this role of more of a broker, now an owner. We own a portfolio of properties, commercial properties that we own and manage. We have a self-storage business where we have a handful of facilities, and we have a brokerage company. So what I do now is I help our producers succeed. I get to coach them, which I love, and help them be successful in the brokerage business. And then we do some development. Done a couple syndication deals recently, just closed on one last week. And that's kind of what my background is. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and thank you for your service again. I mean, it's truly, great to see, we have, especially in the commercial real estate industry, I feel like we do have, a strong support for the military, and obviously we appreciate what you've done for the Marine Corps and really the country. And then also it's great to hear your insights as to why you decided to jump into it, in the Marine Corps, and then ultimately go back to the family business, because, I'd imagine when you're 18, like you said, you had no desire at all to get in the business, the real estate business. And after, thinking about it, after however many years you were away from it, you realized that it can be a good opportunity. And it seems like you're glad you made the decision to eventually come back. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, the way that played out was I ended up going to boot camp, and I told my dad when I left for boot camp, I was like, I'm going to be the best Marine they've ever seen on Parris Island. And I wrote him a letter about 2 weeks in, and I was like, look, I know what I told you, but I just want to survive this place. Yeah. But it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to a culture of absolute excellence. Like in the Marine Corps, my method of figuring out, like doing all the work to figure out the least amount of work I can do, like that doesn't cut it there. Like the only thing that's okay is excellent effort and results. And I loved it. I fell in love with that, and it served me well. It's funny when people thank me for my service, like I have a great amount of satisfaction and pride that I served, and the reality is I went in to the service for what I was going to get out of it. It was a very selfish decision. So I appreciate it when people thank me, but I got way more out of it than the country or the Marine Corps ever got out of me.
Yeah, but I will even say this, and I have a history of military service in my family, my grandfather, my father, and everything else. And I've heard similar stories to them. Is that a lot of people that join, they join for a particular reason, whether it's to get out of the current situation they're in, or maybe they had a history of people serving and they just feel like it's a natural progression. But every single person that I've talked to that served, that I respect highly, has told me the amount of value they got from their experiences in the military is just unfathomable, and it's really impacted them and who they have become as a person. And so, I definitely don't want you to sell yourself short, because again, it's one of those things that, when you first got in the military, that may have been the reason why, but again, the service that you've provided is nothing to be, it's definitely appreciated. So
sure. No, I get that.
Yeah.
The funny thing is in boot camp, I got a tremendous amount of clarity. Like I went in not knowing who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do or any of that. About 6-7 weeks in, all of a sudden, the Lord gave me a tremendous amount of clarity. And I realized nothing more important on this planet, at least, than family. I knew I wanted to go home and work with my dad when I got out. I realized I was in love with the woman who is now my wife. Had to write her this frantic letter, because we had essentially broken up when I'd gone to boot camp. So like I got clarity on all these things, and I was ready to move on with my life at that point. I still got to give the next 5 years to the Corps, which I don't regret for a second. But yeah, it's funny how you gain clarity sometimes in stressful situations.
Oh yeah. Hey, I have to say it too. I mean, I appreciate your service, regardless of where you fell and how you helped. Because a linguist, like you said, I mean, you're listening in and you're talking, hearing what the bad guys are trying to plan. So that's a huge help in my mind. So not everyone can do that, and I appreciate it. So that being said, I kind of, with your military experience, I'm just wondering, how exactly has that actually helped you in your commercial real estate career?
Well, in a bunch of ways. Like I mentioned before, just the idea that like excellence is the only thing that's okay. And really, like, and you guys realize this, especially on the brokerage side, you don't have a lot of control over the results. You don't. That's the most frustrating thing to me about brokerage in the first place, is you can't go all like Don Corleone and tell somebody that either their signature or their brains are going to be on that contract. Like we can't do that. We can't force people to sign things. It's all about influence and effort. So excellence in the effort that we put into the business, that's been a huge thing for the success of our company. I had a dad who always did that. I could have just emulated him and skipped the Marine Corps. I'm thankful for how things played out for sure, but just giving excellent effort and just sort of the trusting that the results are going to come. That's kind of why I like development and being a syndicator a little bit better. You have a lot more control. You're the one signing contracts. You're the one deciding go, no go. Raphael, you'll understand kind of running through the strategic analysis model and all those 4 feasibility steps that we talked about in 102. Like as a developer and a syndicator, I get to make that call as opposed to being the broker influencing and providing excellent service and information for the person who's doing that. The other thing was, and the Marine Corps is incredibly systematic. They have a SOP or a standing operating procedure for everything. And even down to tying your shoes, it's left over right. Like that's the right way to tie your shoes. And I always thought, man, why do they care about my laces on my boots? Why do they care? The reason they care is they don't want you to have to think about anything that's not important. They want to systematize everything so that when the crap hits the fan, when you're in actual combat situation, you're free to react based on your training and you don't have to make all these little decisions. So my wife was making fun of me about this a couple of weeks ago. I got a new pair of shoes. We got out into the car. I relaced them left over right because the manufacturer did it wrong, but it's just, if you systematize things, it takes all the brain damage out of making all these decisions and it frees up your bandwidth to react to the need of the moment or be proactive in what you're trying to accomplish. So we've systematized our business. Like what happens when you're going to try to find and win more business, the prospecting part of the business? Well, we've systematized it. We create campaigns and we just work the system. If we're not getting the results that we want, then we tweak the system one thing at a time. So we see if there's an impact on the results or not. When we get a new listing, what's the process of like, what do we do? We don't have to think about it and we don't have to decide, we just execute. So that makes us very efficient, fast, effective in those things. So we've just systematized the business. The other thing about just being in the service is I will never be as cold as I was when I was in the service. I'll never be as tired. I'll never be in as much stress. I'll never have to do things as hard as I went through back then. Therefore, I have this sense of confidence that I can pretty much handle whatever's thrown at me. Now that may or may not be true or not. But man, just having gone through that, there's some Ronald Reagan quote that I don't remember word for word, but I always loved it. It's like, a lot of men wonder what they have. A lot of men wonder if they have what it takes. Marines don't have to wonder, or something along those lines. That's been true in my life since I got out. Like, I just approach things with a sense of confidence, hopefully never arrogance, but just knowing that, man, we can pull these things off. We can do it. There's probably a bunch of other things. Oh, here's the other thing that I remember. I remember when I was in the service, I tended to get promoted faster than my peers. Now, this was not because I was better at anything or I had some sort of innate higher character or anything like that. It's that the promotions are systematic. All right. You do X, Y, and Z, and you qualify for promotion, at least at the beginning, especially. And my peers would not do the extra stuff that would move them to the top of the line or the front of the line. I did all those extra things that would move me to the front of the line. And I always remember looking around thinking, why are these other guys not taking these other courses that take like an hour and give you promotion points? Or why are they not doing this extra stuff? And so it's the attention to detail, to the little things that can really separate brokers from their competition, and just, doing the little things to serve your clients that can, move you to the head of the line, so to speak. So off the top of my head, those are some things that have really benefited me in our business that I learned in the Marine Corps.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And the systemization piece is so big. I mean, I forgot who said this, but it was like, if under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion per se, you fall to the level of your training. So that's why, like, you continually practice things, right? Like if you didn't train and practice in a game setting, let's just take, sports, for example, like, why do you think these people train on a regular basis over and over and over again, taking 1,000 shots in this particular scenario, so that when the pressure is on, you don't think, it just happens, right? And the external forces that can potentially derail you don't affect you, because you're literally it's all muscle memory at that point. So I think, that's key in any business, but in particular in the commercial real estate business, where there's so many different moving parts that you need to factor in. So
now, obviously, I'm a UK fan. I'm wearing a UK shirt. My parents went there. My son goes there. I'm a big UK fan, which means I don't like North Carolina at all. Okay. Do you remember when Villanova beat North Carolina in the national championship? It might have been like 2017, and it was tied. They hit that last second three, won the national championship. I don't care a thing about Villanova. I just love that North Carolina lost that one, right? They interviewed Jay Wright after that game, who's the coach at Villanova, and he essentially said the same thing. He said, we practice that play every day, all season. That play that they won the championship. And it goes to your point. That quote, I love that quote. That's actually my favorite quote. You don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of preparation. And I've researched who wrote that quote or who said it first. And the only thing I can find is that it was some anonymous Navy SEAL. Who knows who actually said it, but I love it. But that's what Villanova did. When the stakes were the highest, not just a ball game, not just a nationally televised ball game, not just a Final Four game. This was the national championship. For most of those players, the highest stakes they'll ever have in their career. And when it was all on the line, they rose to the level of their preparation and they nailed it. They hit that shot, won the national championship. Now, I generally don't have stakes like that in my business where everything's on the line in one moment, you have to come through. Yeah. But man, when you systematize things even on a prospecting call, if you know exactly what you're going to say when somebody answers the call, that's the only thing you actually know you're going to get to say is your opening statement on a prospecting call. Or if you get the voicemail, and I own some property, so I get prospected on. I have brokers calling me. I had one called me yesterday wanting to buy one of our self-storage facilities. And most of these calls are horrendous. They don't nail the obvious thing. If I answer the phone, they know they're just going to get, I might hang up after their opening statement, or they might earn the rest of the call, but they don't nail the obvious. And so we try to nail those obvious things. And it's the systems that really allow you to do that. Yeah,
definitely. No, I couldn't agree. Go ahead.
The kind of quote that stands out for me is like, I think, I can't remember who said it, but amateurs train until they get it right, and professionals train until they can't get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes the difference.
No, it's just a level of preparation and training that you pursue, and it takes time. It's an iterative process, and I'm sure you're still updating and modifying all your processes over time. And it's a never-ending continuous improvement play. But
sure.
Yeah, you guys have just nailed my favorite two quotes. In fact, like about 6 times a year, I go to 10X in Richmond, Virginia, and I train their new salespeople on how to think like and sell to brokers, guys like us, right? I try to just take them inside the broker's brain and how they can. And I literally, those are the two quotes that I use. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. And then the other one you were talking about, it's like you guys have been hiding in the back of the room, kind of thing. But
we bugged everything. So
your quote game is strong, fellas.
There you go.
Across the board. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask you, and again, commercial real estate is such a broad industry. I mean, you could literally specialize in a variety of different property types. I happen to specialize a lot more on the retail side as of late. And so that's just been kind of my specialization over the last year or so. You chose the self-storage side of things. Why did you choose self-storage? And I know you obviously operate as in the brokerage. You guys do a lot of different things, but I'd like to kind of dive in a little bit more on the self-storage piece, if you don't mind.
Well, my dad was a home builder, and he was the son of a home builder. Well, you guys don't remember, and I barely remember, but around 1980, the interest rates spiked. Jimmy Carter was the president, huge inflation. As a matter of fact, it was the last time we saw inflation like we're seeing today. Yeah. Interest rates got up into the high teens, tipping 20%. Nobody was buying homes. And my dad had these crews, and they were building 100 homes a year, and all of a sudden, nobody's buying. So he's got a problem. And he had heard someone speak at one of their national home building conventions about self-storage.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to another question that I have is actually, so when you're actually looking for opportunities, development opportunities in self-storage, what are some like aspects of that or characteristics that you guys use to like analyze those opportunities?
Okay. Well, I'll give you a couple examples.
Sure.
I care about job growth. Like when I look at a market, when I start with the market first, I care about job growth. And Raphael, I'll tell you from our 102 class, that's what the whole class was about, essentially economic-based analysis. And we use that to analyze markets. So Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Let's see, Jeff, are you in Louisville as well? Okay.
Yep.
So what, 45 minutes south of you guys?
Yes.
When Raphael was in our class last September in Louisville, that week, Ford announced that they were building that new battery plant right outside of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. And in 5 years, they're going to create 5,000 new jobs there. Huge, huge announcement. And Ford, thank you, Ford, for making that announcement while we're in the class, because we're teaching in that class how to take job announcements like that and actually calculate demand. So instead of it being theoretical, we used the Ford example. And here's how that works. I'll do this quickly, not to get too technical, but if you have 5,000 jobs like that, those 5,000 jobs, almost all of them, they're making batteries for these new electronic vehicles. They're going to export those batteries out to the world. And in return, new dollar bills are going to come into Elizabethtown, Kentucky. right? Those are called basic jobs. They export stuff outside the market. They bring new dollar bills in. Basic jobs have a multiplier effect or a ripple effect, and they throw off non-basic jobs. Basically, you and I operate in the non-basic job space. What I do is help people in Owensboro, Kentucky, buy, sell, rent, whatever. That's what our company does. Self-storage, we provide a service. We're not bringing new dollar bills into Owensboro. We're basically circulating the ones that are already here. That's a non-basic job. So every basic job has a multiplier effect. When Elizabethtown, I don't remember what the number is, but let's just say it was 5. That's called an economic based multiplier, an EBM of 5. So those 5,000 jobs, let's just assume they're all basic, have an EBM of 5. All of a sudden, that's 25,000 new jobs that are going to be created in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. That's Hardin County, Kentucky, population 113,000. And all of a sudden, they're going to have 25,000. I don't remember what the actual numbers are, but it's to this scale, 25,000 new jobs. Well, those people that are going to come fill those jobs, they bring their families with them. And so let's just assume that the population to employment ratio, which is that next ratio, PER, is 2.5. Now those 25,000 jobs, you multiply that by 2.5, and what's that? 60,000 new people.
Yeah, just over.
There's only 113,000
yeah,
people there now, and there's going to be 60,000 new people there. Now let's just say half of those people are going to commute from Louisville, which is possible. They might not all move to Hardin County, Kentucky. That's 30,000 new people. That's population growth of almost 30% in the next 5 years for Elizabethtown, Kentucky. Now, we can figure out how many more houses they're going to need. We can figure out how many more apartments they can need. We can figure out how much more self-storage they're going to need. We can figure out how much more retail, how much more office, how much industrial they're going to need based on that new job. So we can quantify demand. So I've been looking at Elizabethtown for self-storage, to get back to your question. And we found a lot. And I'm thinking, okay, Elizabethtown, all their product of self-storage is the traditional single story. They do have some climate control, but most of their product has some age on it. There's nothing new. There's none of those Class A multi-story, all climate control facilities. I was like, we'll introduce that to Elizabethtown. So we found a hard lighted corner that was a 7-Eleven lot. It was actually, I think, a Speedway lot, but 7-Eleven and Speedway just merged. So there's all this excess great locations out there. And this was one of them. All of a sudden they put it on the market. I put an LOI on it, was about to put it under contract because I knew the demand. I know the demand is going to be there in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. But Raphael, what are our 4 feasibility tests? Do you remember what they are for the strategic analysis model?
Yeah, so there's governmental, there's
legal and
there's legal, there was oh gosh, there's 4 total. I know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Site related. Oh gosh.
Competitive
analysis. That's true.
And then the financial feasibility, right?
Yeah.
Financial analysis. So for me to move forward, it's got to pass these 4 tests. So zoning, will they let me do it? The legal aspect of this, it was already zoned correctly. I don't even have to rezone the thing. It's beautiful. Site, it's flat. It's on a hard lighted corner. It's got great visibility and good access. Okay, great. I don't have to do much to it. I'm gonna have to fell some trees, but that's it. Competitive analysis. Competitive analysis says everything. I'm going to introduce a new level of product, a Class A product that they haven't seen before. I can probably get higher rents. I like my competition. I even find out during that right across the street, it's actually across an alley, there's a traditional self-storage that's going to be built. They're going to make it to market before me, but I don't care. It's the old product and it will create a little bit of synergy. And there's plenty of demand that's going to be there. So that doesn't bother me at all. It kind of reinforces the fact that I've got a superior site than what's next door because I'm on the corner, they're behind me. Great. Then I do the financial feasibility part of this. And you know what I find? If I build this thing, I can expect a 1% internal rate of return because the rents are so low. It was like a gut punch, man. I was so excited about this lot. So I went home and I talked to my wife and I said, look, if we build this thing and we can get 20 to 30% higher rents than the market, which is actually possible with a new product type and a shiny new facility, something they haven't seen before, something that's nicer, all that stuff, that's possible. And the rents will definitely be there 5 years from now, no question. But we can probably make some money in the first couple of years. And I'm only going to need to borrow about $4 million and probably raise $3 million in equity from a group of investors. Like, how do you feel about me signing on a $4 million loan when it might work? Maybe. And she was like,
maybe.
No, that doesn't sound too good. So we let that lot go, which kind of stinks. But we may go back and try to find something with 4 to 5 acres and do more of a traditional layout. That would absolutely work there. The cost is a lot less for building that type of facility, and the rents would justify that. So we're kind of back in this spot where Elizabethtown and the jobs are coming. The demand's going to be there. We just got to financially come up with a model that's going to work there, or wait till the rents are there and go pay more for a lot because it's going to cost more later on. So as an example, that's Elizabethtown. We like other markets like Bowling Green. I'm going to Bowling Green, Kentucky tomorrow. They just April got an announcement, same type of plant. It's going to be 2,000 jobs. Basically all basic jobs, same multiplier effects are going to happen. They're going to need like another 8,000 rental units, housing units in Bowling Green. There's going to be a ton of demand for self-storage and all that other stuff. So I pay a lot of attention to the job announcements, especially the big ones. Or if you can look at a market and say, look, here's 5, 6, 7 companies that are all going to be adding 100, 200 jobs. Well, that all adds up. And you can quantify the future demand using economic base analysis and shift share analysis, some of the things we teach in CI 102. And I mean, you can make a lot of money. But here's the beautiful thing. Those 4 feasibility tests saved me from making a mistake. If I'm going to take other people's money in a group investment, pair that with some debt that I'm going to sign on personally and move forward, like I want to know that I don't have to wait 5 years to capture that demand. Like things need to happen. Like it won't work with that model. If I had $5 million sitting in the bank somewhere where I could just put my own money in and I could be patient and wait for it, then that might be different. Probably still wouldn't do it, but and it's all about the jobs, to answer your question.
Makes sense. And access to a lot of this information. I mean, one thing that I was very impressed by, through the course, obviously, is the structure it provides to the process of determining whether or not this is a feasible opportunity. Obviously, you talk about those 4 factors that come into play, and then also, access to the site to do business, a platform, which is just so powerful. I mean, I was digging through that thing throughout the week, and I was just like, I can't believe that all this information is curated in one area. And obviously, you have to learn how to navigate it to be able to pull the right reports, and then you have to interpret what you're looking at as far as the data is concerned. But once you get a handle on it, I mean, you could pull some pretty comprehensive data to be able to determine whether or not, if you're looking at a retail opportunity, how long is it going to take you to get, from the absorption standpoint, what's the gap in demand for the area, like you were talking about. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. And obviously, you use what you learn, which is pretty awesome.
Well, the beautiful thing about all that economic base analysis and what we teach in 102 is it gives you the system and the framework, which is what I crave in our business. It's what we try to set up, and what we were talking about before, just the systems and processes. And I can go in and analyze a market, and I can make a decision, hey, let's move forward or let's not. And I don't have to wonder if I'm forgetting something, and I don't have to recreate the wheel. I can just hone my analytical skills and continue to better utilize the tools that we have available to us, make really good decisions, even if that decision is no, which it was in Elizabethtown. And it's still, and I hate that it was a no. I really liked that site, but
Yeah.
man, you can't let your emotions rule you into making a bad decision and costing yourself and potentially other people wealth in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Removing the emotion from it. And again, it, like you said, it's hard, right? We're humans. And everyone says, you know, one of the things we often hear from our guests is that, you know, residential is a lot more emotional than commercial. It's like, yeah, it can be, but really the emotion shifted in a different direction. Like, you know, you're still going to encounter emotion because you're making a financial decision. And anytime there's a financial decision involved, there's going to be something inside of you that stokes up emotion. So, you know, it's kind of a poor comparison a lot of times when people say that, because in reality, it's just a different type, you know, so maybe it's, you know, ego, maybe it's anger, etc. But it's a different type of emotion that comes into play.
Yeah. I don't believe for a second that people make rational decisions ever.
Mm-hmm.
They're always in some level emotional, you know.
The last deciding factor is the emotions, in my opinion. And just in commercial, you have the analytics first, and you get to look at that more than you would residential. So I think that's why the emotion in residential is higher, because you're on that point and that factor of your decision longer than you would be on commercial, in my opinion. I think that's why people say that it's more emotion. Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, I think they're stuck on their emotions longer for a longer period of time. So
emotions are real and they're powerful.
Yeah.
But my mentor used to say they dropped out of school in the 3rd grade. Like, they're not smart. Sometimes they line up with logic and smarts, and oftentimes they don't. And I think a mark of maturity is someone who can pay attention to their emotions, not ignore them, because they're a data point, but they can see if it lines up with good reason or not, and then choose the right path and not be ruled by their emotions. I think that's a mark of maturity. A lot of people struggle with that, including me sometimes. But to your point, commercial real estate tends to lean more towards reason. But man, to think for a second that your emotions don't play a role in any of that is a complete fallacy, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
So one thing we've been touching on, you know, the CCIM curriculum that you've been mentioning. You know, you've been affiliated with them for many years, and you're a professor as well with the Institute, and you get to travel across the country teaching the curriculum, in particular CCIM 102. One thing I wanted to ask you was, how's your affiliation with the CCIM Institute kind of helped or impacted your business?
Well, I mentioned before that it gave me a lot of confidence right off the bat because I was taking the courses. I didn't have the experience, but I started learning the knowledge of commercial real estate right away. It also introduced me, like, I remember when I don't know if you had this experience, Raphael, when you started taking the course, but my first 2 instructors were Bill Moss and Bill Canty. Bill Canty is passed away. Bill Moss is still an instructor. They taught my 102 or my 101 course in St. Louis. And I remember watching those guys wax poetic about the beauties of financial analysis. And I was sitting there thinking, man, I want to be one of these guys when I grow up. Like, these guys are awesome. You know, just the way they could communicate in the first place, the information that they knew, the success they had, like, it gave me something to shoot for, just being exposed. And that's not even to mention the network you create in these courses, meeting the other students. So it's been you know, the information is great. The learning, I was telling my kids last night at dinner, like, I just crave learning. I love it. And once you get interested in something, you know, learning is one of my favorite things to do. And the CCIM had all kinds of great information. So I was just soaking it up. But then implementing that to serve my clients better, to make better investment decisions for myself on the development side. It's so applicable to all those things. And I had somebody call me today. He said, "Hey, do you know a good broker in such and such a market?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And if I didn't, I could find one just like that. And being in a little place like Owensboro, Kentucky, you know, we're a real city, 100,000, but like, we're not a big place. We're surrounded by farmland. None of the nationals have offices here. So we've gotten a tremendous amount of business over the years from the CBREs, from the JLLs. We're working with both of them right now. With NAI, we're working with them right now because they don't want to come here. So they look up and who are the CCIMs in Western Kentucky, and they find us. Like, there's literally 3 CCIMs in Owensboro, Kentucky: me, my dad, and my uncle. So it's been a huge advantage in that way. So it gives us access to a network, and it gives us credibility. When somebody needs something in Western Kentucky, we often get the call just because of those letters after our names, you know.
No, it makes a huge impact. And you kind of alluded to it at the beginning regarding the confidence factor. I mean, anytime you're dealing with, you know, this is one thing that I, you know, coming into the industry brand new a few years ago, you know, you're often dealing with people who are, you know, advanced in their careers and in some capacity where they've run business for a long period of time, or maybe they're investors themselves and have owned property for a long period of time. Like, it's a different caliber of individual that you are trying to service. And so getting an understanding of how they think, or at least how they should think about their real estate decisions, really gives you that confidence to then, you know, approach them from a prospecting standpoint, or really even with your existing clients to provide an additional level of service to be able to better serve them. And then also on the development front, like you said, I mean, I know a lot of people who are in the brokerage side, but their aspirations is to get into the development side. It's like, well, what better training ground than to be able to learn this curriculum and then apply it to your existing clients who are actively being a developer. And then once you start generating capital to a point where you can now do it yourself, like you've already had the opportunity to be able to learn from some of the best in the business in CCIM. I mean, similar to you, the instructors that I've had are just extremely impressive individuals who have done, you know, absurd things in their own right over the course of their career. And, you know, I don't know, it's just been, I couldn't speak more highly of the Institute, and I'm looking forward to getting the designation here shortly. So,
and imagine, like, for me, okay, I get to be an instructor now, which I love to do. But I get to teach with guys like Mark Seipert, who was a guest on your show, I think shortly after we had the class.
Mm-hmm.
I get to learn from him a week at a time, every time I get to teach with him, and talk about somebody that really knows their stuff. I mean, the learning is just amplified once you get to be an instructor. So it's been a huge factor in my career. I'm in love with it. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to start saying, as we start rounding out, thank you for coming on. We really do appreciate your time for coming on, your expertise, and your story. I really enjoyed listening to your story. And the first question that we normally ask is, Raphael and I are both voracious readers ourselves, and so is a lot of our listeners. So one of the questions is, what is one of the most impactful books that you've ever read? And it doesn't have to pertain to commercial real estate. It could be for any point in your life. Maybe it changed the trajectory for you in your life. So,
well, before I answer that question, let me just say that Audible has changed my life. Yeah. All right. I listened to 147 books in 2021. Like, I can't get enough. I love it. Driving, whatever. I love consuming new information. So I've got a couple for you, but I will say this: most impactful book I've ever read is the Bible. Easy. You want to learn about leadership? There's nothing better. You want to learn about truth, or how to connect and communicate and serve people? Like, it's all there. So with that said, here are a couple others that I would suggest. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willett and Leif Babin. They're former Navy SEALs. That's a great book, especially if you want to learn how to and really just take responsibility for yourself and to excel, especially if you run a company or you treat your business as if you're the CEO of your company. It's a great book. I've read it a couple times. Another one is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I'm sure somebody's probably brought that one up before. best book on negotiation I've ever read. And it is squarely in the camp of people don't make rational decisions. And it's a negotiating book from that angle, from an FBI hostage negotiator. And it's fantastic. I've read that book a couple of times too. And he even touches on real estate in the book a little bit. And then the third book, I bet Mark Seipert suggested when he was on here, but it's The New Geography of Jobs. Like for commercial real estate, if you really start to analyze markets based on job growth, that book is fantastic. Mark suggested it. Really, for the first time I heard about that book was during your class in September, Raphael. Mm-hmm. And I've read it twice since then. It's a great companion to what we teach in 102. But that's a really, really good book.
That's awesome.
You think, man, I'm not going to read a book about jobs. How boring could that be? It is not. Not at all. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned Audible. I mean, it's game changing, especially because you can literally just be going down the street. I know we have a lunch meeting here in the next however long, and we're just going to go down the street as I'm going to the meeting. 20 minutes of me just listening to the Audible book. And, we do it at 1.5 speed, or at least I do. And so that amplifies the time you get to listen to it. Cause I think you can listen up to 2 times, if not more, and still retain the information. So, great hack. But both those books that you referenced, and then also The New Geography of Jobs, Mark did recommend it. I have it on the list. I just need to get to it. So I'm planning to do that here shortly.
And it's on Audible, man. Yeah. Just press play. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, like Jeff said, we're just really honored and glad we were able to get this, recording squared away, because I really did gain a lot of value from the insights that you provided on the podcast. One thing we like to do at the end of the podcast is we like to ask our guests to contribute to something that we call the Commercial Real Estate Treasure Chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience. And usually we provide, helpful PDFs, Excel sheets, really anything digital that you think would be of value to the audience. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity to share what you're willing to contribute today.
Sure. So a number of years ago, I wrote an ebook called The Beginner's Guide to Prospecting. And it is a systematic approach to how to create a prospecting campaign to go find and win the business that you want. And it's a little bit dated at this point. Like if you download it and you see my picture on there, I'm thinner and clean shaven and stuff, but it's literally the same system we use today. We use maybe a little bit more evolved version of it today, but that's what we're doing the rest of the afternoon. That's what we were doing yesterday afternoon, just going back to the bullpen in the back of the office and making calls and going after the business that we want. And so I'm happy to give you guys that PDF that they can download from the treasure chest, and hopefully that'll be valuable to some people.
Well, yeah, I could definitely see the value in that for sure. I'm definitely going to read it soon as we get it. So can't wait. And I know other people are going to want to reach out to you, Bo. I know that you have a lot of contacts in CCIM and everything else, but our listeners may not be a part of that organization or not, but they really want to reach out to you maybe about CCIM or possibly future deals. How do you want them to actually contact you, and through email or phone or however? So
yeah, sure. Well, easiest way to find us is at barroncommercial.com. It's BARRON commercial.com. You can get our information there. My email is bo@wgbarron.com. And so you're welcome to reach out. You can get our number off the website. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and those places. Don't spend much time on Facebook. But yeah, I'm happy to connect with your listeners, and always love growing the network, and great satisfaction in providing value and helping people out. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to.
That's awesome. And I would encourage you guys to reach out to Bo. He really is a wealth of knowledge. And, since we've connected through the CCIM Institute, I'm really looking forward to keeping in touch and, seeing your journey evolve over time as well. And we'll also include those in the description. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, we'll include all the links that he referenced in the email and everything else in the description below. And if you guys are listening to us in a podcast format, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., it'll also be in the description as well. So again, we want to thank you all for tuning in. We greatly appreciate all the support. We've seen a significant uptick in our downloads as a result of you guys leaving 5-star reviews. So if you guys don't mind stopping by Apple Podcasts and leaving us a 5-star review, it really means the world to us. Along with that, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and then learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.